That was beautiful. Thank you, Mary. Wow, that sounds like fun. And that's what we want to have today, right? We want to have some fun. It's really nice to see your faces, and thank you for showing up. I want you to feel like today is experiential for yourself. This is not just me being a talking head, standing up here telling you what, or sitting, I should say, what an NDE is. I'm going to tell you all about my experiences and share with you what has happened. But I really want this to be something that you go home taking something of value. So while you're at it, if you don't have a question in your mind right now, but you know that there's something that you really, really want to ask, please think about it and keep it there. So when we get to the Q&A, you'll be ready, and I'll stay as long as the room allows, because I really want you to get something out of this particular talk. And I think you will, just by listening to my story. It's quite amazing, if I do say so myself. So just to get started, let's, first of all, let me acknowledge your soul. Namaste. And probably most of you know what that means. My soul bows to your soul. I'm happy that you're here, and I'm happy to be here to play with you. So here's the thing. Let's bring ourselves present. If you're feeling any kind of tension, just feel relaxed. Let's get relaxed. Let's close our eyes. Unless that's uncomfortable, you can leave your eyes open, but it tends to make you a little more introspect. Just allow the energy to move down over your face so you actually relax your face. How often do you think about doing that? Relaxing your jaw and your neck, and just shrugging your shoulders and relaxing those as well. Feeling the energy moving down your spine. Everything just relaxes and becomes present in the moment, so we can all listen and participate at the same time and be part of this community. Taking a deep breath in and letting it out. And again. And letting your energy center wherever it's comfortable, whether that's in your heart or your head or wherever it's comfortable to have your awareness in your body, and bringing your attention back. So I'm going to start with storytelling. And I'm going to ask you a question first, though, because there's two ways that I can do this. And someone asked me if I would read the story from my book. And that's one way to do it, because it's detailed and there might be things in that part of it that I don't remember. I was 35 when the first NDA happened. I was 51 when the second one happened. So there might be things that I don't remember that I have the story if you want me to do that. The other way is that I can start where I start with my story and journey into that space while you're here, while you're present, and allow you to have an experience of what it likes to feel like being on the other side, because it's totally possible. I've done it before. People get it. You just have to tune in. It's just a matter of connecting to the Shakti and feeling what it feels like. So, show of hands. Who wants me to read? That's what I thought. Okay, so we're gonna journey. We're gonna have fun. I mean, look, wow. It's fun to be in a room of like-minded people. I love it. So here we go. To begin, I came from Canada. I was born in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And I was about early 20s when I started to hear a call. And that call landed me in Orange County about 1979. And I've been here ever since. And I've studied with, as you know, as a master of yoga for over 40 years. I'm a twice-a-day meditator. And being on a journey and understanding the spiritual path has been a lifelong thing for me. So when the NDE happened, I was 35 and I was going through a particularly difficult time. I was going through a divorce. I had a 4-year-old son at the time, so there was probably a lot of stress factors on my body that had something to do with this the way that it manifested. It was, pretty intense physically. So you often wonder in hindsight, did I have to get hit over the head that hard? Yeah, apparently I did. Not just once, but twice. So, and that's because, and you'll see as I go on talking about my personality, I came in very stubborn. I came in very will-centered. In fact, one of the biggest lessons that I learned on my journey in the yoga world was that I was very will-powered. So I get things done. I would literally just put my head down and just keep ramming forward until it got done. But that was not paying attention to the consequences to myself, my mind, body, and emotions, and it wasn't balanced in any way. And so one of the biggest things that I learned from the NDE was to live from my heart instead of living from my third eye. So that's probably something that we can discuss in the Q&A area, but that really was a predominant part of my journey. And anybody on a spiritual journey knows that everybody in this room is unique, and every one of our lessons are totally unique. But that was mine. And so I need to learn how to be kind. I need to learn how to be compassionate. And look where I'm sitting right now, talking to people about my journey. And that just makes my heart so happy. It's not something that I saw myself doing. I started out as an entrepreneur. I still am. I thought building businesses and making money was what it's all about. It's not. It wasn't fulfilling in any way. And I've learned that what makes my life happy, what makes me peaceful, is being able to help other people and being able to talk about the spiritual journey. So, okay, that brings us to the actual event. I'm going to sit back just in case. If I close my eyes, it's because I'm accessing the memory. I'm tuning into what it felt like at the time. So I'll be back. Just stay patient with me. At the time I was, right, like I said, in the middle of a divorce, which was not fun at all. I was raising my son pretty much on my own. And I came down from upstairs one morning, and I was sitting in the bathroom, actually, and I fell forward. And the next thing I realized was I became conscious. I was literally face planted on the floor. And I knew from a background in having some kind of emergency training that I was in trouble because I was blacking out. And I literally crawled to the telephone. If you remember back then, they actually existed on the wall. And I somehow reached up and managed to get the telephone and called a friend and said, I'm blacking out. And that's all I heard. There was a click. And the next thing I knew, I had, I think, blacked out probably 3 or 4 times by the time she actually made it to my house and got me to the hospital. As we walked into the hospital, I remember walking up to what do you call it? Not the podium, wherever they take your intake, right? And I remember standing there and thinking, oh my God, here it comes again, because I knew what it felt like at that point. There was like a tingling feeling in the heart. There was a rush of blood, literally the blood flowing out of my heart. And then bang, I would just go down. So I felt it coming, and I said to the attendant, I'm going to pass out again. And whoever was behind me caught me, because the next thing I know, I woke up on a gurney. But here's the journey in between there and waking up on the journey or on the gurney. When I crossed on the other side, it began with the feeling of, I remember seeing a veil, literally like a veil. Just kind of a weird material, like it was just there. And of course, I'm still in my mentality at this point. And I remember walking up to the veil, literally separating the veil like it was a curtain. The second I stepped through the veil, everything changed. I was no longer in a body. I no longer sensed physicality underneath my feet or around me. It was literally just a consciousness. My initial reaction was very excited. I was like, yippee, I'm going home. And it was like it literally was like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders, all my burdens. But I wasn't thinking about back there in my life. So I guess it was okay to feel that way because I was just feeling unburdened. And I remember running like, oh, I'm running home. And I started to run and at that point there was only space, but I remember it kind of filling in like I was in a meadow, flowers, grass, everywhere, nothing but blue sky. I remember just being so happy and at peace and like I was elevated. Without a body, your consciousness is just so free. And just when I thought I was going home, I'm going to call this a force field. The energy that I met up with was something that I had never experienced before in my life and have a few times since because I've had a second NDE. But this particular energy literally felt like a force field, like I was surrounded, almost like if you were in the eye of a tornado, which I have not, but I kind of imagined that kind of intensity, that kind of power, that kind of energy, but it was blissful. And it was permeated every cell of your consciousness. And I remember just being in that energy. Who knows? There's no time on the other side, which is blissfully freeing on its own. I don't know how long I was there. But when I had a thought again, it was that I was going home and the energy literally pushed me back. And I was being turned around and my mind was I was not like unhappy that this was happening. It was just, I was not questioning. I was just watching and observing at this point, but I was being guided back towards the veil. And I knew at that point that it wasn't my time to go, that I couldn't go. It wasn't an option for me. And as I was about to come back onto the other side again, I heard these words. This is the kind of love I want the world to know about. There was other things said, but that was the important part. That was the calling. That was me understanding and realizing what my purpose was, that part of what I would do here on the planet is literally bathe people in infinite love. The next thing I know, I'm back through the veil. And I open my eyes and the doctor is coming at me with a needle that's about this big. So it couldn't have been that many minutes, right? Like from the time that I blacked out, was on the gurney and into the ER, I looked at him and said, wait, stop. I'm here, I'm back. And so that didn't end up happening. So that really was the beginning of a journey that has gone on now for almost 40 years. So that night I spent in ICU. My roommate didn't make it. I listened to crash carts going up and down the halls all night long and just being completely overwhelmed and not understanding what the heck had happened to me. I was, I guess the word shock or just overwhelmed the whole time. I would just continue to pass out. And when I came to in the morning, one of the doctors said, well, you could have a pacemaker, or you could leave here and this may never happen again. I had a 4-year-old son, and the idea of being in the car driving and something happened that it would happen again was not an option. So I had the pacemaker implanted, and I've had one every 10 years or so since, because the batteries only last so long. But anyway, that's a whole other medical story. That year in between, and I might read a little piece of this because some of this I can't totally remember, but that year afterwards, that first year was so confusing. And it was like I tried to be the person I was before, and it was impossible. I had all these habits and thoughts and ways of being and things that were going on in my life that I really couldn't cope with because I didn't have the same skills that I was using before. Something had literally been transformed and changed in the process of being on that other side. And I would walk down the street feeling like death was right here, and it didn't have the same feeling. And I'm guessing there are people in the audience today that understand what I'm talking about. I didn't fear it anymore. And those are odd words to say, and I know that they impact people in a different way. But to this moment, I don't have that fear. What I have in place of that fear that had been there before is, am I doing what I'm meant to do while I'm here? Am I living my life purpose? Am I giving? And that lives with me every moment of my life that I get up and do. So, interesting part of this medical story is for a few months, I went along. I don't know how I ran my business or kept doing the things that I was doing. It was just like somebody automated inside me was getting things done. But I started to notice that I couldn't lift things and my head started to swell. And I thought, what is going on? It was like too much to think that something else medically was happening with me. Some doctor said, well, you have lupus. And I was like, that doesn't sound right, and it turns out that was a misdiagnosis. But I remember like 6 months down the road having to really commit in a way that I never independently or even thought of before, but commit in a way that I wanted to be here and I wanted to do this work. And so what happened is I called up the pacemaker clinic and I said, who's the best cardiologist you have on your route? And they told me Dr. Haskell over at Hoag. Anybody else a Dr. Haskell fan in here? No? Okay. So anyway, he's head of cardiology now over at Hoag. So pretty good doctor. And I didn't realize at the time that he was like 3 years older than me when I actually walked into the room. And he looked at me in my head and he said, have you got a picture of yourself before this? And I showed him my driver's license. He said, oh my God, you have a clot at the top of your superior vena cava, and you have not been getting blood through your heart for a long time. And my body had been rerouting blood through different veins in my stomach and around, and literally keeping me here. And so what happened was immediately the next day, it might have taken 2 days because the procedure had never actually been done in Orange County before at Hoag or anywhere. And he flew somebody in from San Francisco that had done it before, and they put a stent in the superior vena cava, which is a common procedure when you have blocked arteries, but they'd never put it in somebody's superior vena cava before. But when it happened, I was totally awake and watched the whole procedure go on. And I remember how my body felt. And I remember how the right side of my body was like burning on fire because it had not been getting blood for months. So that was the second part of my medical journey. And in hindsight, I think it really was about me realizing that I needed to commit to be here because there was still a part of me just like, I could go anytime. No, I have work to do. And sitting here right now is part of that work that I have been learning how to do. I wrote a book in 2015, and it literally was about this looking back. So it took many years for me to be able to talk about it, the NDE. In fact, this is the first time in public that I've actually spoken about it. I've done it actually on a YouTube video. Somebody interviewed me from England, was the first time that I actually spoke about it. But it was too vulnerable and too scary for me to do that up until now. And so in 2015, I was like, okay, Lord, I've always wanted to write a book, and why don't I do it about this? And I literally committed to sitting down every day at a desk, and I would sit down at 9 o'clock. You hear this about writing all the time, right? If you just park yourself in the seat, it'll happen. Guess what? It did. And in this case, I would say, okay, God, I'm here. I'm ready. And I don't know what you want me to write about, but let's do this. In 4 months, there was never a morning that I didn't get a response. I wrote every morning until this book was done. And I'm going to cry. My beautiful daughter-in-law made this print version for me because I've only actually left it in a digital format. And I didn't do a lot of promoting of it. I kind of use it as if you want to know about my story, then you can read about it here. So there's actually second part of the story that I am going to read about in this time period after the heart attack happened. But this is my book. It's called Always Choose Love, 6 Steps to Open Your Heart and Transform Your Life. And it literally is me looking back and going, okay, girl, you have practiced yoga for all of these years and you've meditated for all of this time. What the heck have you learned? What about your life was transformed? How are you different from the little 22-year-old twit that came here from Canada so long ago? How have you grown? And that's what this book is all about. What I did to transform my own life and how that kind of turned out for me. So I am going to read a part of this journey. And it's really about the transforming by God's grace. Here we go. This afterlife encounter changed the way I experienced life forever. The best way I can describe this change in me is to say that I learned to walk with death right beside me in joyful acceptance. Somehow, on some level, I had acknowledged its presence and inevitably in my life, bringing me a level of peace I hadn't known before. It's an experience that continues to expand, even today. My afterlife experience made me take control of my own life. I accepted and began to exercise my power and stopped acting like a victim. That's one of the biggest chapters in my book. Get rid of victim consciousness. And that's the baseline for having what people talk about as personal power and being personally empowered. You have to take 100% responsibility for your own life. And that was one of my big lessons, along with the arrogance and the other thing that I said. Okay, I could no longer run from or deny the fact that I had no joy in my heart at that point in my life. I needed answers to big questions such as who am I and what's my life purpose? Getting fulfilling answers to these questions became an all-consuming quest. Well, it probably was my whole life, but it became even more so. I came to understand at a deep level that we are not just bodies or minds, but human beings with a unique purpose. I found love, joy, peace, and strength by connecting to my essence, my inner self, and decided to do whatever it took to live in this energy, highlighted by divine love, which is what I call that experience of connecting from the other side. That force of energy in my afterlife experience that told me to go back to my life still lives as a voice within me every day. And it's so much easier to recognize and listen to it. I strive to embody more of this pure consciousness so that others I come in contact with might experience that divine love and what it feels like. My heart yearns for God constantly. I did not know then that I would repeat this afterlife experience at the age of 51. This deepening and acceleration of my journey was just a foreshadowing for me of a dawning realization that God can imagine a life so much bigger and better than we can. I developed a deep compassion for people and a greater understanding of who they are and why they do what they do. It has served me ever since, and quite honestly, I learned how to serve it. This one pivotal event began a hallmark process in my life of learning how to surrender to higher power every day. Through meditation, not long after my life experience, my personal life purpose was revealed to me. This is what I remember from the day that I had that awakening experience. There was a brilliant light pouring through my body that seemed to be coming from above and from my left side behind me. It felt sweet and from an utterly powerful source, a type of power not regularly known or experienced. The message in my head resonated clearly. This is the kind of love I want people to know. This is the message I want you to carry. It was the same feeling of divine love that I had encountered before on the other side. And so I set out on a journey to discover how to bathe people in infinite divine love. The thought of loving someone is ever present in my consciousness now. I love myself, my day, and all of its situations, as well as every person that I come into contact with, by choice. I genuinely get excited when I see another human being at their innate beauty and the potential that lives inside of each person. My heart wants people to know and experience the light as well as the divine love of their Creator. Since that time, when I visited the other side, I have worked diligently on myself, whittling away at numerous character flaws, as well as teaching myself how to evolve my responses so that I always take the high road. I always choose love, hence the title of my book. I never want to act from my ego. My personal mission is to live from a self-empowered place and to respond to the world and all of its situations with love. It is the most fun I can imagine having and some of the hardest work I have ever done. In the process of recovering from this afterlife experience, instead of calling it a near-death experience, I call it afterlife because you can't really get near death. You either are or you aren't dead. So I had a lot of childhood pain as well to learn to surrender to a higher power, even though it seemed an impossible task on more than one occasion. I also discovered that my own afterlife experience was deeply connected to almost losing my mother to suicide when I was 16 years old. I was home for the summer in between my first and second year of university when I found her on the kitchen floor, her body blue and her eyes rolled up inside of her head. I'm sorry, I probably should give you a trigger warning before I read that part of the story. I forget it was in here. Her eyes rolled up inside of her head. My 9-year-old sister had locked herself inside a bathroom thinking my mom might get up and hurt her. A bottle of spilled pills lay beside my mother, and I could tell she had been drinking her favorite Crown Royal whiskey, which she typically imbibed when she was overly distraught. I learned later that she'd had a confrontation with a neighbor who yelled at her, which in my mother's world at the time was too much to handle. It wasn't the first time my mother had tried to end her pain. She had already visited the hospital psychiatric ward multiple times due to what doctors labeled a nervous breakdown. I had many memories of that ward and all of its confused patients, even as a child. It was when I almost died myself that I realized why my mother had blatantly tried to end her life and why I couldn't bring myself to understand how someone could get to that devastated place. At the time of my afterlife experience, my emotional balance wasn't that much different from hers. I was just killing myself slower, one bad decision at a time. I worked too hard and wasn't at all coping well with my stress levels. It might have been a less dramatic way to go, I suppose, but the end result was the same. We both caused ourselves a significant loss of quality of life. Now that I continue to learn from a place of love, I always remind myself that I am a human being and that life is just a game. My solemn vow is to never give up enjoying it. With every small step, I make to respond to my life with love, God takes 2 or more steps towards me. Good idea. I brought a Kleenex. Okay, where was I here? Oh, God takes 2 or more steps towards me, making it easier for me to grow and experience a deeply rich life. There is no doubt in my mind that every ounce of effort is worth it. I constantly refine and broaden my understanding of what the process of surrender means to me. Every situation or person I encounter presents another opportunity to appreciate my life and everything that I have been given. I live with a deep sense of peace that life unfolds as it should. I have no need to struggle or question why things happen to me. Life is what it is. And when you are looking at it from a transformed set of eyes, as I am, it is the most beautiful gift one can imagine. I think what I do is talk a little bit about the 6 steps. Of course, the first one would be surrender. Learning how to surrender to a higher power is literally about, I call it the drip, drip nature of spirit, like how it talks to you, how it speaks to you, how you feel it. You know, what is that process for you? For me, it's kind of like I'm always getting messages, like drip, 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 like coffee, drip, drip, drip. But am I paying attention to it? And that's the difference between, are you on the spiritual journey or are you not? When you're paying attention to those inner voices, they will guide you where you need to go. They will show you who you are from the inside out and what your purpose is. And you get clear on every day, what should I be doing? I get centered, I get clear, I get into this feeling now of just being a service. That's probably the easiest way to say it. And then I go about my day making it right. And when in terms of if there's interruptions or complications or whatever comes my way, I respond with love. And I'm not saying I'm not human. Trust me. I have days when I still get down. I have days when I get ticked. I still have those things that are going on. The ego is always here. The ego versus the spirit. The ego is always here doing its monkey business. You're always, at some point, is going to try to pull you off track, but you get so good at recognizing it and just saying, it's okay. Be quiet. I don't need you right now, And then spirit gets to dominate more. Soul gets to come through more. And that's the journey for me, having soul come through as much as possible. So that idea of surrender and learning to let go, really important. If you're feeling bad or off course in spirit, you're holding on to something. Ask what it is that you need to let go of. So that would be one of the steps. Of course, connecting to essence is what I do when I meditate. So that's not for everyone. And I'm not here trying to tell you that you need to meditate. I am saying it worked for me. Some people use mindfulness, and that's a step for them. Some people connect in nature. Some people connect through animals. There are many ways to do it. Silence is one way. If you are a lover of silence, that is a really beautiful way to connect with spirit. If you can get still, the whole idea of meditation, so that I can be clear about what I think meditation is to transcend mind and emotions. So if you're sitting still and all you're doing is thinking, this is not meditation. When you're meditating, you are not thinking. And you're not feeling because you're connected to spirit and you go beyond mind and emotions and past the stillness. And you have an experience of spirit, which is what yoga actually is all about. When you get into the higher yogas, the difference between it and, say, an organized religion or any other, there are as many paths to spirit on the planet, I think there are people. So transcending is the whole point, and how you do it is up to you. That's part of your spiritual journey. For me, meditation works, and that's what I use. But you have to connect to self, inner self, to get the inner guidance if you truly want to be on that spiritual journey. That's my understanding. That's how I've done it. One of the other steps is to release subconscious blocks. People who initially get on the journey are find that particular subjects come up repeatedly, and it's because there's a lesson there. If it keeps coming back to you, there's a lesson there. And I would recommend you go to your inner guidance and find out what it is. And communities like this are really so important. Like I studied yoga with a group of folks that have been in the same yoga center for 40 years, and I can ask any of them, questions along the way. It's really helpful to be around like-minded people. So there you go. Sometimes there's work to be done. Now, trust me, I had a lot of work on my path. And it's totally worth it. One of the other steps that I learned as a result of my journeying is that I can become the master of my focus. And why this is important is there's a great analogy I like to use is like, you can be living life and be in a rowboat and you don't have any oars, and say you don't have a motor and you don't have a jib, you don't have a sail, and the wind comes up. Now what are you going to do? That's kind of how life is it not? You get knocked around and you bob up and down on the water and you're like, this is no fun. But when you learn to still your mind and you learn to connect to your inner self, now you can control where you put your awareness, where you put your mind. What do I want to think about? Not, oh, somebody said this about me and now I got to spend all day feeling bad about that. Or some situation went on that was really uncomfortable for me and that really makes me feel bad. You can learn to let go of all those things, letting go. And then you can ask yourself, what do I want? How much time in your life have you actually spent asking yourself, what do I want? What does my soul want for me? Well, now when you're able to focus your awareness where you want to do it, you can manifest. They use the word co-create. I don't know, some people don't like that particular word, but you're learning literally how to create your own life, your own world with spirit. Yogis call that Leela, playing with the world. And that's actually one of the last steps. Learning how to play in the world with spirit, creating what you want, having a celebration of life. Doesn't that sound like a lot more fun than always just getting like tossed up and down on the seas that's going on in the world? That's one of the most important steps you'll make, and you'll know you're making progress with the letting go of the subconscious things and all the things that some people have trauma, some people have somatic stuff that they need to let go. When you get through all of those things, you'll start to understand that you are learning how to play in the universe. You're learning how to be who you were meant to be, what you're called to be, what your purpose is, and all of those things just start to unfold. And you're not questioning it anymore. You just are being that essence. You are being that particular person. So that's why I wrote the book, in case any of the steps that I have done would help you, or help anybody that actually reads it, because some of the things that we all go through, like arrogance, a lot of people come through the yoga center that have to deal with that particular subject. But arrogance is nothing more than thinking, I'm right and you're wrong, right? That's where that thinking comes from. And the truth is, we all have our own truth. And if you stop thinking right and wrong, you're going to be at a lot more peace, and you're going to have way better relationships. Way better relationships. You'll be able to relate to people in an entirely different way and be able to be in a heart-centered relationship. You don't have to be right. You don't have to be right. And that other person doesn't have to be wrong. It just makes people feel better about themselves sometimes, but it's something that you can definitely let go of. So there you go. Those are the thoughts that I have about the steps in my book. And so we'll just open it up to questions. If you're ready at this point, Mary?
Could you give us a little more information on your second near-death experience?
Oh, it was not near as exciting as the first one. The first one was really the revelation. The second one was, I had the first pacemaker in for over 10 years, and I went to see Dr. Haskell, and he said, you are not using this like maybe 5% of the time it was an on demand. So if my heart dropped below a certain level, it would kick in and make sure that I didn't black out. He says, you're not using the thing. We're just going to turn it off. So, who was I to question? I was like, oh, okay. So turned it off. And for 6 years, I didn't have an episode. And then I was in Florida with my brother and literally standing in the kitchen. And boy, that feeling came back and you do not forget it once you've had it. And I remember just had enough seconds to think, oh, crap. Here I go again, and bang, hit the floor. And so, long story short, ended up in the hospital in Florida. My brother was a nurse. He called my cardiologist here, and he said, just replace the head. But in the time that I actually blacked out, I went back to the same place. It was the same feeling. It was just like a homecoming, like, I don't remember have any different revelations in that particular thing. Just a feeling like it's okay. You're going to be okay. It's just a blip in the graph. It's just another stepping stone. So it was like I had been able to up until that point, because that's 20 years later. Well, I was 35 the first time. The first one was a week before my 35th birthday. The second one was the day before my 51st. And so I got terrified of birthdays. And I was like, shit, I'm hiding under the covers on the week before my birthday. But there was not like any additional feeling there. There was just that sense of being able to move over into that space anytime I wanted. And literally in between those times, between the first and second, I could go there whenever I wanted to. And I often did for comfort, just to feel like I'm okay or I'm on track and this is good. I'm still connected. I just enjoy that energy. And you kind of experience that energy up front, right? When I was talking about it, you get the feeling of what that Shakti feels like. It's so still, it's so calm, it's so beautiful. I like it.
I think you refer to the steps. Are they in your book and online? How can we get reference to the steps? Because I really like those.
Well, you can. It is on Amazon, and it's the title is "Always Choose Love: 6 Steps to Open Your Heart and Transform Your Life." And I can give a link to whoever, Mary or whatever, and they can send it. But if you go in and you put in "Always Choose Love" and my name, Cathy Lee Taylor, you'll find it. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for asking.
I'd like to know how you go back when you choose to go back.
Just allow it. Literally, it is just an allowance process because your awareness is here by choice in the physical body because you're having this, physical life journey, right? But if I sit down in my meditation chair and I go, okay, God, I'm open and I'm receptive, which, by the way, is one of the biggest lessons you'll learn from being on the spiritual journey, how much you like to be open and receptive and how enjoyable that is, because that is how spirit moves through you. So all I have to do is sit in my meditation chair and remember the feeling of what that energy feels like. And I will go back. But I don't do it all the time because, well, certainly I don't want my consciousness on the other side when I talk like this or I'm walking around or, I still have to operate like a human being. So I don't just jump over there every once in a while. But sometimes it's really comforting to just sit down and go, I want to feel what that feels like again. It's just like hitting the mother of all hugs. If you can mind that. Imagine, like sitting in God's lap and just feeling like, oh, wow, this is awesome.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the voices? How do you distinguish it's the ego or the spirit?
Yeah, that's a question that I get a lot. And so when you say the voices, that's, I want to try to be as clear as I can about that because the ego is the trickiest monkey you will ever deal with. And it will tell you whatever you want to hear. Mostly. And so I guess the best way to say it is when you're at the beginning of the journey is you got to be suspicious of all of it. It's like, what does that? And it really does come down to, for me, the feeling behind it and the intent behind it. And because I studied the higher yogas for as long as I did, I kind of recognize when I'm being tricked into, an egoic state, Like, for example, if I look at a situation and I'm feeling anything but love inside going on, anger, or I'm right, you're wrong, or, all these things that I began to recognize that are not pure consciousness, then I know this is the way to go, So let's try to take an example, like even in the worst turmoils, when I was going through a divorce, I remember that process of being divorced actually was one of the most refining things about my spiritual journey, because I got a lot of opportunities to not be pissed or not want to strike out or to not, be a real jerk about things. And of course, because I had a son, I was 100% committed to whatever his well-being was what I wanted, even if it didn't fit my narrative, even if it didn't fit well, even if it hurt me because the other person was trying to hurt me and didn't have the same commitment that I did. By the way, he was very good about that. But there's always this, push, who's right and wrong when you're getting divorced. So I got really good at hearing when my ego was involved and I wanted to be right, because there's a lot about divorce that makes you feel unworthy, makes you feel like you went down the wrong path, that you're hurting someone, especially when there's a little person involved. So I got really good at separating those voices. And what I did was kind of hold up love like a, what's the word? An example, like a torch, like an example. And I would even say things like, well, if love were to make this decision, if, I could get the highest good out of this decision for myself and for the other people involved or person involved, that would be the one I would try, even though it might not feel familiar or comfortable, many times not comfortable. That's where the growth and transformation comes in. You make the choice to respond from love, whether you want to or not. And then the ego, when it's not paid attention to enough, will get quiet. We'll be like, okay, we got it. You got this. Like it's, you choose differently. You just get intent on, I'm going to choose love in every situation, no matter what it costs me. I'm going to grow. I'm going to transform. And so really the book, and someone pointed this out to me recently, is that the book was all about me accepting my own power to be able to change and to become a better person and to respond in a way that would be more from a spiritual point of view than an ego point of view. And so that's what my whole journey is about. And what I talk to other people about is, if you are like-minded and want to have the same kind of a life, the rewards are feeling peaceful, fulfilled, productive, having what you want in life, being happy when you want. You have a choice, about how you're going to live your life every time you get up every day. There's no struggle. There's no suffering when you make choices for your own life to be in this loving kind of energy. It will come at you. Life will, don't get me wrong, life does not stop and you become, like you're walking on a cloud all the time. Stuff's going to get thrown at you all the time. You just better, like Wonder Woman. You're just better at maintaining your center and where you want it to be and where you want your focus of awareness to reside.
Could you share more about how yoga was part of your spiritual journey?
Oh, how was it not? So studying yoga was my whole journey. I met a master teacher in my early 20s, and it was really odd because at the time I was working down on 17th Street in Costa Mesa, and that's where I had my first office. And I would drive them down this street, 17th Street, typically going to the burrito factory or whatever it was. And I would see this sign, it said yoga center. And in my mind, I would go, I'm going to go in there one day, just like, kind of trigger something. And one day I did go in there and I opened the door. And the first words that came to my mind were, you're home. And I felt this overwhelming sense of just relief and love and acceptance. And this is where you were called to be. When I came from Canada, this is where I was called to be. This was my study. So I never left. I studied under somebody who mastered yoga, mysticism, metaphysics, and I couldn't wait to get to classes. I mean, this was like a 3-4 day a week event for me. There was classes all the time. There were yoga retreats that happened 7 times a year. We had our own retreat up on Palomar Center or Palomar Mountain. And so I was in a group of people that were growing and loving and studying together, and we were all working out our stuff together. Trust me, we all had different stuff, and some of those people married and did their thing and had loving families, and other people are journeying on a solo journey. But that yoga was the principles behind all of the things that I've learned today, that I've talked about today. I owe to my study of yoga and, Hinduism and reading those particular scriptures and books. At this particular yoga center in California, which actually still exists, Costa Mesa, we taught and still teach postures, which is the first thing. Asanas are a way of learning how to release tension from your body. We're not the gym yoga. We're not the, go in. I mean, you get toned if you do yoga, but we're not looking for the physicality of it. We're looking to release stress because, as we age and you see people, start to hunch over and do these things, that's tension in your body. And if you learn to do postures, you'll release that tension and you won't have all the issues you do, including inflammation and the things that happen as we get older. So, we also teach pranayams, breathing, which is a big part of the yogic practice. We also teach meditation, which is everything for me. I actually teach a meditation class online. You're all welcome to come on Friday night at 5:30. It's a totally online event, free. And the thing about having a master teacher is he offers all those things and then more classes, like things about the higher yogas, how the principles of the universe work and how we can work with them. And literally how to, I think his whole job in hindsight is really he would say, you come in and your candle is snuffed out and we relight it for you. We put spirit back on until you get used to what it feels like traveling in spirit, and you can relight your candle anytime you need to. That's kind of how we did it at the yoga center. Come and be in that energy. Come and meditate with us. There's nothing like having a group of 40 or 50 people meditating together. Beautiful. And they all get still at the same point. Very powerful at the same time. So I owe everything to his teachings. My understandings of how the world works and how I've been able to put my life together was really about that.
You mention as one of the 6 steps that you use, the term manifestation.
Yeah.
And I have a little issue with that term, and it's because of how I feel it's interpreted.
Yep.
Which is the people that seem to talk about manifestation very often seem to talk about the end result, and the end result is something material.
Yes.
And I keep thinking that's a waste it's a waste of a concept.
Yes. Well, okay. So I'm not hearing a question, but I'm responding inside because I really agree with you on a lot of levels, and they mean well. I mean, people are dealing with having to pay the bills and feed themselves and take care of their kids, right? So it's easy for the ego to grab onto that and say, oh, we can just manifest $1 million or whatever it is that we have to do, or we can, and there's some truth to it. but I get the rub. I understand what you're saying. The ultimate, in my opinion, is being able to manifest your highest good, what is meant for you, what God would want for you. And you are the only one that knows what that is and what the lessons are along the way. So I get what you're saying. I mean, don't let it ruffle your feathers. Just keep manifesting for yourself in the way that you love to. For me, the whole principle behind this manifestation is to bring you to a place in your life where you are living from gratitude and you are living from that internal abundance. That you can create something outside of yourself is likely true if you are putting out that energy.
Yes.
And you want something to come to you. You want your loved one to call you or whatever it is. It's likely you can pull that into you. It's likely you can manifest that.
I was just curious why in your tagline that you have the emphasis on older women.
So, yes. And that's because so I don't want to rule out the guys. I love you. I'm not saying that, I'm not talking to you. I am. I just happen to have a very soft spot in my heart for women who have been raised to think that they don't have power. Women who have been raised to think that there's something wrong with them, that their self-worth is damaged for who they are. Women typically come from a shame-based culture versus men who, like for example, two boys punch each other in the nose, like 5 minutes later, they're shaking hands and playing together, Women do that and they go away thinking, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me that happened. They carry a shame with them all their lives. And so I love to address that in women and show them, look, you have so much personal power, you have no idea. Just connect to it in the same way that I'm talking about today for everybody. I just happen to have a personal love for that conversation. So I'm not eliminating anybody. I just love to see, and I happen to be one of these people that think women have been afraid to step into leadership positions and that our world would be better if they would do it more. And not leadership positions in a way of you got to be a big corporate president, because I've gone down those roads and they're not in the space that we're talking about. So if you're wanting to make a difference on a global level, which I am one of those people, you are not going to be following any of those old patterns. You're going to be learning how to be a leader by being kind of, the kids now have a term they call solopreneur instead of entrepreneur. You used to call us entrepreneurs, and you'd make little businesses and you'd which I've considered myself. But now a solopreneur is somebody that can literally have their whole life defined by the internet and they grow a whole business online, and it's kind of like being a solopreneur. Like you become so good at who you are and you do that so well that your life influences everybody that you impact. That's kind of how I run my gig. That's, the same way for women and men. No different. The world is changing. The way we have been defined and the way we've grown up is changing. You want to keep up, change with it. You want to not suffer, change with it. Understand what's going on in the minds of the younger people and how you can apply all the wisdom. That's the one thing that frustrates me. All the wisdom that we have gained and here sitting in this room, don't let it go to waste. Even if you just talk to one person, 5 people, 10 people, don't let it go to waste. Help each other. That's the way we're going to get out of this turmoil and cycle that we're in of transformation now. Helping each other, building community, learning to get back into a place of loving and supporting each other. Thank you for that question. Opened up an interesting place for me. Thank you.
What type of meditation do you practice?
What type of meditation do I practice? Okay, so actually that brings me back to the yoga center and I never said this about the yoga center. At this particular center, they teach a lot of different kinds of yoga. Kriya, the Hatha, Bhakta, Jnana. Leela. So what's the word? Leela. Yeah. So, there are different ways to learn to meditate based on your soul personality, literally, because I was so will-centered. My teacher said to me, you are a Raja yogi, which is what Raja is, the third eye. And that's the will-centered, I'm just going to, punch everybody until I get what I want kind of thing. That's that raw, you just think, raw power is going to take me through everything. My teacher basically said to me, with God's grace, you'll be a bhakti in this lifetime. And I wouldn't say it was an easy process, but I would say that I have learned very much how to live from the heart. That's also very much what's in this book. How did I go from being a will-centered person to living as a heart-centered person? It's kind of like thinking about a type A personality, right? You know what a type A personality does? They just keep stressing themselves out and running the motor until there's no oil left and it dies out, it cranks out. If you switch up and learn to operate from your heart, women are completely different creatures. And this is another reason that question about, centering on women. Women try to get into the workforce and they try to act like men. If they just work hard enough, if they just work long enough, they will get what men have created, which is everything that you see, which is amazing, right? The things that they have done, it's amazing. But women are not those creatures. It burns them out. If you look at, I dare you to look at like one lawyer, doctor, all these professions that people tend to do. Most of the women that I meet are burned out and they're unhappy with the path that they've chosen because it hasn't taken them where they wanted to go. Maybe monetarily, they have beautiful homes. We all live in this gorgeous county that we live in and they're making money. But if you get to know those people, they're in pain because a lot of women, we operate, we create, that's the right word. We create from a heart space and a womb space. We make babies, for crying out loud. Can you think of a bigger miracle than creating a child? Like that's how women operate. And when they do a business or, work in a way that they're connected to their creativity and their heart center, they're much more fulfilled. They're much more productive. And as a result, they're often much more successful because they can maintain it. You can only maintain that facade of, I'm going to act like a guy. I'm going to operate like a guy and try to be successful for so long. And you pay the consequences physically and mentally and emotionally. Women are entirely different creatures, but that's a whole other subject, maybe for another book. Did that answer the question, by the way? Yes? Bhakti. So that's the answer to your question. And TM is great. Not something we teach, but TM's great. Yeah. Whatever gets you there.
How is it that you're living out your purpose now?
You're looking at it.
Okay.
I kind of put out, and other stuff, right? I still run an online business to make money. I spend very little time at it, however. I've got it down to like an hour or two a day. I actually do a podcast. You might be interested in this. Actually, I didn't think about this. It's called Aging and Spirituality. You can find it at any place that you get your podcasts. It's myself and the gal that was actually one of my main teachers at the yoga center. Her name's Kali Devi. She's Chris Jensen on the podcast. We go by our English names. So she was one of my first teachers. And I guess it's been over a year now that I said to her, why don't we just sit down? I know it was during the COVID period. We were like, we're used to being able to get together and talk about yoga no matter what, over coffee or breakfast or whatever it was. So we couldn't. And it was like, why don't we do this podcast where it's like we're sitting, in the kitchen talking to it about yoga and other people can listen to it and, maybe their questions and they'll get something out of it. Well, we're up to 100 episodes. So you can find that. And I actually am evolving that cast. I think my calling is starting to evolve into a place where I'm going to be talking to doing more interviews and talking to people, women specifically, who are in leadership areas, but they're doing it in this way that I was talking about in terms of they're not necessarily CEOs or they're, doing that whole gig. They might be, but they're operating from the creative principle that I was talking about that female really, really succeed from, really, really feel fulfilled from. So that's kind of where the cast is going in that direction. So you can find me online with Aging and Spirituality. I write. I'm doing actually a whole year program right now, learning how to be more of a content writer on social media, which I've wondered about for years, but now I'm starting to understand how to get a community. So I'm building a community online of people that are just like you, like-minded, want to talk about the spiritual path, want to do the kinds of things that we've been talking about today. So I'm building that community, probably inside like a Substack or something like that, where I'll do a newsletter and I'll keep up with people on a weekly basis. So that's one of the other things that I'm doing on my path. Is this answering your question? About how it's evolving and how my purpose is evolving. So writing, the cast, and I put it kind of out like public speaking. I wasn't quite sure. I felt like, that would be fun probably, but I don't really know how to do it. And it takes a lot to get out there and really, start promoting yourself and doing the public speaking. I used to do it in business. I, was in Toastmasters for a while, but I love this relaxed kind of, and I don't have to be a talking head, trying to cram something down my point of view down your throat. I love this, getting together and really talking about something that matters to us. So I kind of put it out in the universe if I'm meant to do that. And an email came in from the other Mary. Yeah. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm there. So it's kind of like that. I'm like, putting out what do I need to do next? I'm staying open and receptive to that, and I'm just growing with it as it goes. I feel like 2024 is going to be a big, more connecting with more people, So I think that's what's happening for me.
I think we can wrap it up now, and I
Yay.
want everybody to know how very pleased I am that our club was able to bring her out into public speaking and wish her well. And I'd like us all to give a great hand and applause.
Thank you.
And gratefulness for her being here. Thank you very
for
much.
coming.